Rain hammered against the farmhouse windows as Ryan Carter sat at the edge of his daughter's bed, listening to the storm roll across the fields. For 3 years, the former Navy SEAL had built a fragile peace in Cedar Falls, hiding behind paint-stained work shirts and the quiet routines of a single dad. But peace had a way of breaking, and tonight the cracks were widening. Rebecca Martinez stood in the doorway clutching a file that could topple powerful men, the same men who had sent shadows to their door and placed Zoe in the crosshairs. Ryan's jaw tightened, his hand brushing the dog tags at his chest, knowing the fight he tried to bury had finally found him again. When the thunder shook the farmhouse walls, he realized the truth. Family wasn't just something to protect, it was the reason to go to war. The farmhouse had always been a sanctuary, a place where laughter and crayons softened the edges of Ryan Carter's battle-worn heart. But tonight, as thunder rolled over the Iowa fields and shadows flickered across the walls, it felt more like a watchtower on the edge of enemy territory. Every creak of the wooden beams, every gust of wind through the shutters, carried the weight of danger pressing closer. Rebecca spread the files across the kitchen table, each document a puzzle piece of corruption and betrayal. Senators, defense contractors, even retired generals, the web stretched wider than Ryan had ever imagined. The more names she uncovered, the clearer it became. Castellanos had been a symptom, not the disease. Ryan leaned over the table, scanning photographs and financial records, his mind working in the old patterns he had tried so hard to abandon. Roots, patterns, vulnerabilities. He saw them all, not in ink and paper, but in human lives. He could almost hear Captain Rodriguez's voice echoing in his memory, reminding him that battles were never about numbers, they were about people, and people always left traces. "Look at this," Rebecca whispered, tapping one of the documents. This senator approved funding for Meridian's armor contracts, even after repeated failures. He buried casualty reports that showed dozens of soldiers died because of faulty gear, and now he's quietly sitting on the Armed Services Committee, shaping future defense policies. Ryan's jaw tightened, which means he's not just guilty of corruption, he's complicit in murder. Rebecca nodded, her eyes dark with resolve. "If we expose him, we don't just bring justice for my father, we stop more soldiers from dying." Ryan glanced toward Zoe's room, where the faint glow of her nightlight shone under the door. "And if we expose him, we paint a target on all of us," he said quietly. Rebecca didn't argue, but the silence between them was heavy with truth. The storm outside grew louder, rain pelting the windows as if the sky itself was trying to warn them. Ryan rose from the table and checked the locks again, his movements instinctive. He paced the farmhouse, scanning every angle, every line of sight. When he returned, Rebecca was staring at him, her expression unreadable. "You've never really left it behind, have you?" she asked softly. He froze, then shook his head. "You don't leave the teams, you just try to live with the parts that follow you." Rebecca's gaze softened. "Then maybe those parts are what we need now." Her words lingered as Zoe appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, clutching her stuffed dolphin. "Daddy," she whispered, "why are you and Miss Rebecca still awake?" Ryan crouched down, scooping her into his arms. "We're just working on something important, sweetheart. Go back to bed." But Zoe shook her head, her small face solemn. "It's about the bad men, isn't it?" Rebecca glanced at Ryan, hesitant, but Zoe's eyes never wavered. She had a way of cutting through silence with innocence that demanded honesty. Ryan sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Yes, there are still people who don't want us to tell the truth, but I promise you, I'll keep you safe." Zoe studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You always do." She pressed her dolphin into his hand as if it were armor. "You can borrow him tonight. He's brave too." Ryan swallowed hard, his throat tight as he set her back down gently. She padded back to her room, leaving the dolphin on the table between him and Rebecca. For a long time, neither of them spoke. When lightning lit the farmhouse again, Rebecca leaned forward. "She believes in you without question. Maybe it's time you start believing in yourself too." Ryan's reply was cut short by the low rumble of an engine outside. He moved to the window, peering through the rain. Headlights glowed at the end of the long dirt driveway, a vehicle idling in the storm. His pulse quickened. Too late for visitors, too deliberate to be chance. "Stay with Zoe," he ordered, his voice steel. Rebecca's hand caught his arm. "Ryan, I said stay with her." His tone brooked no argument. He slipped into the shadows of the hallway, every step silent despite the storm outside. Years of training rose unbidden, his body falling back into the rhythm of a predator stalking danger. He reached the front door, pausing as another flash of lightning revealed the silhouette of a man standing just beyond the porch, rain dripping from the brim of his hood. Ryan's hand hovered near the concealed weapon at his side. He opened the door a crack, his voice calm but edged. "You're trespassing." The figure didn't flinch. "We need to talk." Ryan stepped onto the porch, the storm soaking his shirt in seconds. "Talk fast." The man pulled back his hood, revealing a weathered face Ryan hadn't seen in years. Scars crisscrossed his jaw, his eyes sharp with the kind of knowledge only shared by those who had walked through fire. "Carter," the man said evenly. "It's been a long time." Ryan's stomach dropped. "Henderson." The name was a ghost from his past, a teammate who was supposed to be dead. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her voice tight with fear. Who is he? Ryan's eyes never left the man on the porch, someone who should have stayed buried. The storm raged around them, thunder shaking the ground, as Ryan realized part 3 of his battle had already begun. Only this time, the ghosts weren't just memories, they were knocking on his door. The storm roared louder, lightning cracking across the horizon as Ryan Carter stood face to face with a ghost. Henderson's presence twisted the night into something unreal, a nightmare given flesh. Years ago, Henderson had been declared KIA, killed in action during a mission gone wrong in Kandahar. Ryan had carried the guilt of that day like a stone in his chest, and yet here he was, rain dripping from his hood, alive but harder, sharper, marked by scars that told their own story. Rebecca hovered in the doorway, one arm crossed protectively over her chest, the other gripping the doorframe. "Ryan," she whispered, "you said he was dead." "I thought he was," Ryan answered, his voice flat, his eyes locked on Henderson. Henderson's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's what they wanted you to think. Easier to bury the truth when everyone believes the body's already in the ground." Ryan's fists clenched at his sides. "Whose truth? Meridian's, Castellanos, or yours?" Henderson stepped closer, his boots thudding against the porch boards. "The truth that your captain didn't die by accident. The ambush wasn't bad intel, it was orchestrated. Rodriguez's death wasn't just battlefield chaos, it was profit, and I've been living in the shadows ever since, trying to prove it." Rebecca's breath caught, her knuckles white against the doorframe. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying Meridian Industries and their friends in high places made sure Benjamin Rodriguez never came home," Henderson cut in. His voice was steel wrapped in gravel. "And if you don't believe me, check the files you've been chasing. I guarantee the name Armitage is in there somewhere." Rebecca's eyes flicked to the stack of documents on the table. She'd seen that name more than once, buried in financial ledgers and contract approvals. She just hadn't known what it meant, until now. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Why show up now? Why my doorstep?" "Because," Henderson said, leaning closer, his eyes burning, "you're the only one left who can finish this. Rodriguez trusted you. You were his man, his shadow. You owe him, Carter. And they know you're the only one stubborn enough to see it through, which means they'll never stop hunting you or the girl until this is done." Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth at the mention of Zoe. She turned sharply toward the hallway where Zoe slept, her instincts screaming to shield her. Ryan took a step forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't say her name. Not here. Not ever." For a moment the storm filled the silence, rain hammering against the tin roof. Then Henderson's expression softened, almost regretful. "She's why I came, to warn you. They've marked her, Ryan. She's leverage. They'll use her to break you, just like they've used families before." The words struck like a blade. Ryan's greatest fear spoken aloud. His pulse pounded in his ears, the air heavy with the weight of choices he didn't want to make. Rebecca broke the silence, her voice trembling but steady. "If what you're saying is true, then we need evidence, not rumors, not ghosts, documents, proof strong enough to bring this whole network down." Henderson nodded slowly. "And I have it, or at least I know where to get it, but I can't do it alone. I've been in the dark too long. They've flushed me out, and if we don't move soon, we'll all be in the ground for real this time." Ryan studied him, his instincts warring. Henderson had once been a brother, a man he trusted with his life. But war had a way of breaking men into pieces, and the man standing before him now was forged from shadows and survival. Could he trust him, or was this just another trap set by enemies who knew too much about his past? Rebecca's gaze shifted between the two men, her voice sharp with urgency. "Ryan, we don't have time to debate this. If he's telling the truth, then he's our best lead. If he's lying, we'll know soon enough. But either way, doing nothing is no longer an option." Ryan closed his eyes for a moment, Zoe's face flashing in his mind. Her smile, her laughter, the way she pressed her dolphin into his hands when she thought he needed protection. He couldn't walk away, not anymore. When he opened his eyes, they were hard as steel. "Fine, you tell me where we're going. But hear me, Henderson. If this is a trap, if Zoe ends up in danger because of you, I'll end you myself." Henderson didn't flinch. "Fair enough." Rebecca exhaled shakily, gathering the files into her arms. "Then it's settled. We go after Armitage." As lightning split the night sky, Ryan felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about Rebecca's case anymore. It wasn't even about Captain Rodriguez. This was about Zoe, about making sure she had a future untouched by the shadows of men who thought lives were expendable for profit. The storm howled, rattling the windows as if the world itself knew what they were about to step into. Ryan reached for his coat, his movements deliberate, his resolve unshakable. The war he had tried to bury had come back to his doorstep, and this time he wouldn't run. The storm had broken by dawn, leaving the fields drenched and the air heavy with the smell of wet earth. Ryan Carter stood at the edge of the farmhouse porch, scanning the horizon as though the answers might rise with the mist. Henderson's words echoed in his mind. Armitage, a name that carried the weight of betrayal, power, and the blood of men who had trusted their country's promise of protection. Rebecca sat inside, her fingers moving over the files again and again, highlighting patterns she'd missed before. The deeper she looked, the more the name Armitage surfaced like a poisonous thread woven through contracts, casualty reports and defense appropriations. It was all there, but scattered, designed to be invisible to anyone who wasn't searching. Henderson leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his scarred face unreadable. "There's a facility 2 towns over," he said finally. "Front company for Meridian. Armitage keeps records there, encrypted backups off the books. If we get in, we'll find the proof you need." Ryan turned, his eyes narrowing. "We're not breaking into some corporate bunker with Rebecca and Zoe in tow." "I can stay with Zoe," Rebecca offered quickly, though her voice wavered. "She'll be safe with me." Henderson shook his head. "No, if they know we're moving, they'll come for her. That's leverage you can't afford to leave unguarded. We need her close." Ryan's jaw tightened. The thought of dragging Zoe deeper into the shadows twisted his gut, but Henderson wasn't wrong. Their enemies wouldn't hesitate to exploit a child if it meant breaking him. Rebecca placed a hand on Ryan's arm. "If we go, we do this smart. We plan, we move fast, and we get out before anyone knows we were there." Ryan exhaled slowly. "Then we prepare." By nightfall, the farmhouse kitchen had transformed into a command post. Henderson sketched crude maps on notepads. Rebecca highlighted key names, and Ryan organized gear with the methodical precision of a soldier falling back into old rhythms. Zoe watched from the corner, her coloring book forgotten. She asked softly, her voice almost lost beneath the shuffle of papers. Ryan crouched to her level, his face lined with exhaustion but softened by love. "Yeah, sweetheart? Are you going to fight the bad men again?" He hesitated, searching for the words. "I'm going to make sure they can't hurt anyone anymore. Not you, not Miss Rebecca, not anybody's daddy." Zoe studied him for a long moment, then nodded with solemn acceptance. She handed him a new drawing, 3 stick figures standing against a dark shape with sharp teeth. Above their heads, she had written, "We win." Ryan's throat tightened as he folded the paper carefully and tucked it into his pocket. "We will," he promised. The facility loomed in the distance the following night, its floodlights cutting through the darkness like watchful eyes. It looked ordinary, concrete walls, chain-link fence, a handful of vehicles parked out front, but Ryan knew better. Places like this thrived on being forgettable, invisible. They moved as a unit. Henderson took point, his movements fluid despite the years in hiding. Rebecca stayed close to Ryan, her nerves hidden beneath a mask of determination. Zoe remained back at the farmhouse, under the protection of one of Ryan's old contacts, a man he trusted with his life, one of the last few he dared to call brother. Leaving her had been the hardest decision, but bringing her would have been unforgivable. "Perimeter's light," Henderson whispered as they crouched near the fence. "Cameras are on a loop. Someone on the inside's feeding me cover." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Who? You'll know soon enough." It wasn't an answer Ryan liked, but time wasn't on their side. They slipped through the fence, shadows beneath the glare of the floodlights. Every sound seemed magnified, the crunch of gravel, the hum of the generators, the faint buzz of electricity through the wires. Inside, the air smelled sterile, metallic. Hallways stretched into silence, broken only by the distant hum of servers. Rebecca's fingers shook as she pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "Once we find the backups, I can copy everything, but we won't have long." They moved deeper, guided by Henderson's memory of the layout. Each corner felt like a question waiting to be answered by violence. And then finally, they found it. The server room, its walls lined with blinking machines, the heartbeat of Meridian's secrets. Rebecca's breath caught as she plugged the drive into the terminal. "This is it." Ryan stood guard at the door, every nerve on edge. Henderson moved silently along the perimeter, checking for alarms. For a brief moment, the plan held. Then the sound of boots echoed down the hallway. Ryan's stomach dropped. "We've got company." Rebecca's hands flew across the keyboard. "I just need 2 more minutes." "We don't have 2 minutes," Henderson snapped, drawing his weapon. Ryan's voice was calm, controlled. "Then we buy her 2 minutes." The corridor erupted with the crack of gunfire as armed men poured into the hallway. Ryan moved with lethal precision, his body remembering every lesson the Navy had burned into him. Each step, each strike, was measured, efficient, controlled. Henderson fought beside him, the years falling away as muscle memory took over. Rebecca's fingers shook as progress bars filled the screen. Documents, financial records, encrypted emails, all of it streaming onto the drive, evidence powerful enough to tear down everything Armitage had built. Ryan slammed one man into the wall, twisting his arm until bone cracked, then turned to shield Rebecca from a burst of gunfire. The servers sparked as bullets tore through the machines, alarms blaring. "Done!" Rebecca shouted, yanking the drive free. Ryan grabbed her arm, hauling her toward the exit, as Henderson laid down covering fire. They sprinted through the corridors, the shouts of their pursuers echoing behind them. The floodlights outside blazed as they burst through the doors, rain slicking the pavement. Vehicles roared to life, engines snarling in the night. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. Ryan shoved Rebecca toward the truck they'd hidden near the tree line. "Get in and go." "What about you?" she demanded, panic flashing in her eyes. "I'll hold them off." Henderson grabbed his arm, his voice fierce. "Not this time, Carter. We finish this together." The headlights of black SUVs cut through the storm as armed men closed in. Ryan's chest heaved, adrenaline flooding his veins. For the first time in years, he felt alive, not as a plumber, not even as a survivor, but as a man who understood his purpose. He looked at Rebecca, her face pale but resolute, the flash drive clutched in her trembling hand.